Hi, today I want to show you how to paint in acrylics. My name is Jadri Barnard, and it's such a pleasure to be helping you today. So first off, I'm going to show you what we are going to paint. This is an absolute beginner class, but even if you are someone who has used acrylic paint, maybe it will still be helpful to become more experienced. So I'm showing you the picture now, a little apple. As you can see, there's nice shading and highlights in the picture. So that's why I chose this picture, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. I'm going to work with paper, but it's not just printing paper. It's actually, it's this product, but I know that there is many types um, of these type of papers. They call it multiple mediums. So it's a little bit thicker than printing paper. And I really do suggest you paint on multimedia paper that's thicker than printing paper. Otherwise, it will become all um, like ugly, and yeah, the paint doesn't stick to the printing paper and it starts with lots of crumbles and things. So yeah, I do suggest that. Then what I do is I stick it onto a cardboard, a little thicker cardboard with some masking paper that easily comes off. And then I'm just going to show you what I'll do in the beginning. This is an A3 size. Um, and I'm going to just do a little wash before I begin, just to break a lot of the white. Now you'll probably have this pack of paintbrushes, or maybe a pack like this. But what's most important is that you have different sizes and that you start with the biggest paintbrush in your pack. That's the start of a painting, is the biggest paintbrush. And that you have some water. I always have some water. I love recycling, so I always use some old coffee pot or some glass or tin holder for my water. For a wash, we do use a lot of water. I dip my paintbrush in the water, and I already applied some acrylic paint to my canvas, and I'm mixing it on my board. You'll see that I'm using like a bright pink, just because I'm gonna do this painting a little playful, and I'm thinning out my paint with water. If you ever forget like anything that I've said today, just remember that acrylic and water are best of bestest friends. Okay, so you are more than welcome to use a canvas, as canvas is also perfect for acrylic paint. Now, once our wash is dry, we are going to move on to our picture. Over here is my apple. I can clearly see my apple, and I'm going to keep my eye on my apple all the time. To start off with, I'm going to just see how many times my apple fits into my reference picture. This is my reference picture, and my apple goes in here twice, because if I move this apple down, it will go in twice into this picture. So that's how I will determine that the apple in this shape will take up almost half of the space. Now the shape here is a little bit different from this shape here. This is a little bit more stretched out. So I'm going to keep that in mind and ensure that my apple is not elongated too much. I'm just going to leave a little bit bigger edges on the side. Okay, so that's round about how big my apple is going to be. I make a little mark at the top and the bottom of where I want my apple to be. I would say here's a good top part and here is a good bottom part. And then I'm just going to determine how many times it goes into the sides, which looks like 1.5. So my apple will take up not half of the space, but 1.5, which would make it a little bit slimmer. Okay, but luckily, because we are drawing an apple, those dimensions will be a little bit easier. Now I want you to this is actually a lesson in drawing that I'm discussing now, but you have to be able to draw to paint. They go hand in hand. Now, the shape that I'm seeing is sort of flat at the top of my apple and a little bit elongated on the sides, but then here I have like a sharpish edge, and then it comes in gradually until it narrows down at the bottom where the apple sits, and then it flattens out again. All right, the same on this side. Okay, then I'm not going to draw the whole apple with all the shading and everything. I'm just going to draw basic shapes. So this is basically in the middle of that apple, the little area where the stick comes out, the stem. It's a little smiley and a little stem. And I'm definitely going to help myself by adding just a little bit of this shadow that I see at the bottom of my apple, leaving the page there. And then for accuracy's sake, I would suggest using a ruler for that line that you see there at the back. I'm using my free hand, but things can go wrong with the free hand. Okay, now my background, my outlines are done. And if I'm not satisfied, I can still adjust here and there. Maybe I feel like I want to make my apple a bit more fat here. Just to give it more of that apple shape. I want to fill my page, not draw a little tiny little apple in the corner. And obviously your best friend, the eraser, that you can use to erase on this dried paint. Not that it matters, just we're going to paint all over this area anyway. All right. Let's get our paints. Now, first off, I do suggest red. I'm sure you agree with that. We're going to color block a little bit with red. We definitely need black paint. Definitely some yellow. Think of the colors that you see there. And also the colors that you can mix yourself. Definitely white. And perhaps if we take a look at our background, we could have some green and some blue. Something that I didn't mention before is having a palette, a painting palette where you can mix your paints on. Very, very important. That's where I'm going to do my color mixing on my painting palette. So to start off, I'm going to go straight in with my darkest colors. We don't want to lose our reference picture. Our darkest colors, which would be our dark reds and black. So on my palette, I'm adding red and I'm adding some blue because I want to make my red a little bit more interesting than just adding black, but I am also adding black. So that's basically what you will have on your palette right now at this moment. And I'm just I'm looking through my paintbrushes for an appropriate brush. And I think I've got my winner. I'll show you what she looks like now. I do like a bit of a more rounder edge for rounder shapes. It does simplify the process a bit. Now over here, I'm taking red, I'm adding a little bit of blue, and you will definitely see a darker, more maroonish color forming there. I always wet my paintbrush a little bit and I just add a little bit of water to that mixture to make sure the paint remains nice and runny. And then I simply add my strokes in this way, as you can see, not long stretched out strokes, but short stumpy strokes. And everywhere I see darkness on my apple, I try and add it. Even my shadow, I'm adding that nice dark area under there. And I'm not completely ending the shape there too sharp of my shadow. I'm kind of lessening the paint on my paintbrush and gradually letting that shadow end there. Just so we don't have such a harsh line at the end of our shadow. Now you will also see some shadowy parts. I'm mixing some water with my acrylics. Some shaded parts here at my smiley part of the apple's head. Definitely some shading there. And I'm blending it out with the rest of the apple. making sure my edges are nice and sharp. But when I do my background, I can also ensure that those edges are nice and smooth. So I'm not going to worry too much about them now. Okay, now I'm cleaning my brush, and while that paint is still wet, I'm going to take my red, take a little droplet of that dark red that I mixed, and I'm adding it to the side here, adding more red than that dark color that I mixed. Just making a darker shade of red on the side here. I'm going to use that on the edges of my apple here. Until I start using my red as is. I'm trying to add nice and thick layers of paint so that I'll be able to blend. Because once your paints are dry, it's fairly difficult, basically impossible to blend in the way that you would like to. Okay, I'm starting to close in on that highlight there, but I definitely have to start moving over to my orange. Now, to mix orange, I'm taking a little bit of yellow and I'm going to add that. I've actually got 2 shades of yellow here. I'll show them to you now. Squeezing out the last bit in this tube. And I'm soon adding my white as well, just so I can use it on demand. So there you can see my 2 different shades of yellow. Obviously, I'm going to use the darker yellow to mix with a little bit of red to get that orange that I want to use now. You can also make another shade of the orange if you want a little brighter orange. That you can mix in here. Then I'm moving into my pure yellow, closing in on that white area there. And I'm just, every now and then I'm going back to my red. I'm just making sure that it has blended nicely with the desired effect. And I'm telling you, rubbing your paintbrush like this is not possible if the paints have already dried. You have to make sure they remain nice and wet. Sometimes you can even use your finger, like I'm here, just to blend it in a little bit smoother. And with acrylics, the idea is to work a little bit faster so that you can work with your colors while they are still wet. Now I'm adding my white. Just to give my apple that shine, just to show that it's nice and fresh. Using some light, very light yellow that I've mixed with that white around the edges. Blending in that lighter color there. And now I'm going to focus a little bit on that area there at the top. Bring in that shape there. And I'm not ignoring my stem. I know it's there. But luckily, because it is black, it's very easy to see it there. Now, I don't know about you, but I do like a little bit of drama in my paintings, not in real life. So I'm taking some pure black and I'm just adding it to this utmost edge of my apple. This is just for some dramatic effect. Just on that outskirts of the apple, and even to the shadow, I'm just adding a few lines, a few strokes of that pure black. That will just make our apple pop a little bit. And then with a mixture of that dark red and black, I'm going to put in my stem, finding that outline, using the tip of my paintbrush, only the tip. Move it in. Not very thick, a very thin line. If your edges seem a little dry, you can just dip them in the water again. Just add some water to your paint to get it a little bit more runny for those smooth edges. You can immediately see how much smoother they are now that I've dipped it into the water. Okay, and I'm just going to use a little bit of white for my highlights here on the stem. And next up we'll do the background. Now for my background, if you observe what you see here, you will see that there's a nice dark blue at the bottom here. I just took a little bit of the blue that I have, and I mixed a little bit of black, a droplet of black and some white, and then I created this grayish type of blue. Now for the rest of the background, I'm going to add more white to that grayish blue. You will see it's a very muted, very muted blue. And I'm just painting the rest of that area there. Now, because I painted pink, oopsie, as my background, you will see that it actually will work if I leave some of that pink there. And I just add a little bit more of white. Water. Some water. You see it's now like a watery blue, and that pink is still shining through, which will almost act like a reflection of that apple, of our glorious apple. Now you will notice that I had a change of paintbrush. I'm using more of a flat tip for my background because I'm working on a flattish surface. So that's when I suggest you go into your flatter paintbrushes. Okay. And now for the rest of the background, you will see it's like a greenish tone. On the one side, it's a little bit darker. For me, it will be the right side. And on the, well, no, on the left side, it's darker. And on the right side, it's lighter. So that's what I'm going to do now. Once again, it's a very muted green. I'm using my flat tip. I'm first just washing my paintbrush, which is essential, and then I dry it with a piece of cloth. And I go straight into it. So I've got green here on my palette. And I'm definitely going to take some white just to make it a bit softer. And I definitely need some more white in my palette. But then I see it still looks too bright. This green is too bright for what I want in my painting. So I'm literally taking some of that dark blue that I mixed, that muted blue, and I'm mixing it with my green. Now you will see immediately that green becomes a little more muted. Another trick that you can use is using your complementary colors. So if you want to mute a green, for example, there's my green. I can take some red. Red and green are complementary, and then you'll see it has the same effect. I haven't added white, so it will be a bit darker, but this color is actually perfect for the left side of my canvas. The style of my apple is a little impressionistic, definitely in the background, which means that I'm going with my feeling. I'm not following any restrictive types of brush strokes. It's free, it's open, and I'm just using the impression of what I got from looking at the reference picture. I'm ensuring there is some wet paint there on the edges before I dip in my toe into my muted green here, which is much lighter. Now you can see I'm going back into that dark area with my lighter green. I'm just putting my palette down for my own comfort. And I'm continuing my strokes all the way to the other side where I'm going to continue adding white. Now I'm moving closer towards the end of my painting. You can see here at the edges of my apple, I've put a lot of paint on my paintbrush, and then I carefully construct my strokes around the edge of the apple, just to round it off so it looks a little bit more professional. Now, the thing that I like about my pink background is that it's still sticking through here and there, and I like that look. Now, if you are more of a realist, you are more than welcome to blend your background and to cover all of those pink strokes that wash in the background. Now, I usually, before I decide that I'm finished with my painting, I usually just take my paintbrush, I go back to the smaller one, and I just have a final look at what I've created. And then I will decide where I would like to touch up a little bit, what I would like to change. And I'm definitely going to take some of my dark red that I created And I'm just going to add it to the side here with the tip of my paintbrush. And I originally put some dark shadings on the edges here, but I see that I have covered it a little bit. Good save. That's the thing working with your phone. I do suggest printing your picture just for the ease of using it. But obviously on your phone you are able to zoom in and use it. I'm just mixing a little bit more of my dark red. I've run out. Yeah, at this stage, you can follow your instincts, but I would also suggest not doing too much. If you feel your apple is complete, that's usually a good sign to stop, because sometimes too much isn't a good thing, right? Knowing to stop is also very, very important. As you can see, I'm not there yet. So one of the last steps of acrylic painting, it's with most painting mediums, is adding the details right at the end. And that's where I'm at now. Just those typical apple lines. That you find. Now I do see there is some highlights at the bottom of the apple. You can add if you want to. And you can have some last looks. I'm definitely adding some more highlights here at the top. Just to emphasize those lines. And I think we can call it a day. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I'm gonna bring it a bit closer to you so you can see the detail. And You can compare your own apple. And remember, you can apply these tips and skills to anything that you are painting. And remember, you can also mix any secondary color that you wish. You can mix purple with red and blue. You can mix green with yellow and blue. You can mix orange with yellow and red, as we did today. And to darken a color, you can always add black. And to lighten a color, you can always add white. So play with your shading and your highlights. That's what makes your artwork really interesting. I hope you've enjoyed this, and don't stop painting. Keep creating.